Kang Seojin was Seoul's most controlled mafia boss. He didn't shout. He didn't throw glasses or wave guns around. He controlled logistics companies, security firms, silent partnerships in nightclubs and tech startups. He moved contraband like it was legal cargo, made grown men sign away their lives with a pen instead of a bullet. He'd built an empire on precision, discipline, and a kind of quiet fear that never needed to raise its voice. But for 2 years, there was one thing he could not control: his own body. Not his fists, not his trigger finger. Those still obeyed. It was something far lower, far softer, far more humiliating for a man like him. Every time a black woman stepped into a room, his nervous system betrayed him. His hands went cold, his vision narrowed, his chest tightened, and if there was even the faintest hint of sexual tension, of flirtation, of invitation, nothing. No matter how beautiful she was, no matter how hard he tried, his manhood stayed dead. The underworld thought his infamous rule was just a preference. "I don't date black women," he'd say casually at parties, swirling his drink, eyes unreadable. Men around him would laugh, nod, add their own preferences to the list. What nobody knew was that the rule wasn't a taste. It was a symptom. 2 years earlier, in a penthouse in Lagos, a black escort had been dragged into a gun deal gone bad, shoved into the center of the room with a pistol to her head. The men who wanted to break Seojin had pointed at her and said, "Kneel, or she dies." He'd shot the gunman, fast, efficient, but not fast enough to keep the blood off her face, not fast enough to erase the terror in her eyes. When it was over, she'd looked at him like he was every man who had ever owned, bought, or traded women like her. "You're all the same," she'd spat, shoes in her hand, feet bare on a floor slick with blood. "You think you own us. You don't." She'd walked out. He'd let her. His empire kept growing. But something inside him shut down. After that night, every time he met a black woman, at a meeting, a club, a neutral space, his body froze. The Lagos room replayed behind his eyes, his chest squeezed, his breathing went shallow, and when one of them leaned close to negotiate, to seduce, to test his power, his manhood simply died. No meds worked. He tried pills in Tokyo, injections in Hong Kong, herbal cures whispered about in Macau. Neurologists scanned his brain. Therapists tried to trace his trauma. Nothing touched it. Every chart said he was healthy. Every test said his blood flowed fine. But in the presence of black women, his body obeyed one command only: shut down. So he turned it into a legend. "I don't date black women," said with an easy shrug, as if it was just taste, nothing more. Inside, it ate at him. Not because he missed the sex, he had endless options elsewhere, but because he knew the truth. A man who led a syndicate that terrified half of East Asia was secretly afraid of his own reaction to a single kind of woman. And if any enemy ever learned that, it wouldn't just be embarrassing, it would be lethal. Tonight, sitting alone in his private medical suite at the top of his hilltop compound, he was about to let someone aim straight at that weakness. The room didn't look like a clinic. That was intentional. Soft light washed over dark wood. The equipment was hidden in sleek cabinets and behind tinted glass. One entire wall was a window, Seoul glittering below like a sea of stars trapped in glass. On the surface, it was a billionaire's relaxation room. Underneath, it was a customized medical bay. Seojin sat in a low leather chair, perfectly still, watching his own reflection in the glass. His black shirt was open at the throat, sleeves rolled to show deliberate scars and careful tattoos. His face betrayed nothing. Only if you knew him well would you see the tell. The faint pulse in his jaw, the one muscle that moved when he was about to do something he hated. He had agreed to this. He had agreed to let a stranger, an African trauma specialist flown in from halfway across the world, step into his most private space and put professional hands on the one part of his life he never allowed anyone near. because on a screen her file had looked like his last chance. Almond Lovu, trauma psychology, extensive work with ex-combatants and race-based conditioning. Brilliant, detached, black. His men had joked when they first saw her profile. "You sure, boss? An African woman? Isn't that exactly what you avoid?" He hadn't answered, because that was exactly why he'd chosen her. If he was ever going to beat this, he couldn't hide behind avoidance anymore. He had to stand in front of his fear and let it look back at him, even if that fear wore a white coat and spoke in calm, clinical tones. A soft knock at the outer door broke his thoughts. Cha Min, his head of security, slipped inside and stopped at the invisible line halfway across the room. He never crossed it unless invited. That was one of Seojin's rules. "Boss," Cha said quietly. "She's arrived. She's at the check-in station." Seojin didn't turn right away. He watched Seoul's lights for one more second, like a man memorizing the view before jumping. "What do you think?" he asked at last. Cha hesitated. That alone was an answer. "She's sharp," he said. "Doesn't try to hide that she's evaluating everything. The guards, the cameras, the blind spots. She asked about our data policy before she asked about the coffee." "And?" Seojin said. "And she's exactly what you requested," Cha replied. "African, dark-skinned, not impressed by money, not easily intimidated." A muscle flickered in Seojin's cheek. "Good. Horrible. Does she know who I am?" he asked. "Only your name," Cha said. "We told her what Hwarang approved. Psychogenic shutdown, trauma-related, high-risk client, high reward. No mention of other operations. No mention of Mafia boss whose nerves collapse around black women," Seojin said dryly. Cha's mouth twitched. "No, boss. That line we left to you." Silence settled between them, heavy but not uncomfortable. Cha had been with him long enough to sense when to speak and when simply to wait. "Are you sure about this?" he asked finally. "If she walks out with too clear a picture of you, of this place, it won't just be your body exposed." "She won't walk out," Seojin said calmly. Cha studied him. "You're planning to—" "I'm planning," Seojin cut in, "to make sure that if she ever leaves, it's because she chooses to, not because fear drives her out. There's a difference." Cha nodded once. "Understood." He turned toward the door, then paused. "Boss," he added, "her eyes, they don't look at you like everyone else's do." Seojin frowned faintly. "How do they look?" "Like she came to do surgery," Cha said. "Not worship." When the door closed, the room felt quieter than before. For a long moment, Seojin just stood there, listening to his own heartbeat. He remembered Lagos, the red dress, the spit on the floor. He remembered the first time he'd said, "I don't date black women," loud enough for others to hear, how the men at the table had laughed, and how something in his chest had cracked a little more. This was either going to fix him or expose him so completely that there'd be no going back. Before we continue, besties, please don't forget to like and subscribe. This is your only way of supporting us, as we promise to bring you interesting and hooking stories every single day. And tell me in the comments section where you're watching from. I want to see all my besties around the world. Now, let's go back to Seoul. The camera in your mind pulls tighter on Seojin's face. Somewhere beyond the door, heels click softly against polished floors. Security scanners beep. A woman from another continent hands over her phone, steps through a metal detector, walks toward a room where a man who doesn't date black women is about to discover what happens when a black woman becomes the only person his body will listen to. He straightened his cuffs, smoothed the front of his shirt, and whispered once under his breath, like a man saying goodbye to an old lie, "I don't date black women." Then the handle turned, and the woman who would ruin that rule walked in. 3 weeks earlier. Accra at night was a different kind of chaos than Seoul would ever be. No sleek glass towers here, no silent efficiency, just noise, Car horns blaring, street vendors shouting over Afro beats spilling from corner bars, the smell of grilled plantain and kelewele drifting through open windows. Amandlovu loved it. She stood in her cramped apartment surrounded by half-packed boxes, stacks of research papers, and a suitcase that refused to close, no matter how many times she sat on it. The power had gone out 20 minutes ago. Again. She lit 3 candles, their flames casting long shadows across the walls, and went back to folding clothes by memory and stubbornness. Seoul. 1 year. Fully funded fellowship at one of East Asia's top trauma research centers. It was the kind of opportunity that didn't come twice. Not for a Black African woman in a field dominated by Western institutions that loved to cite your work, but never your name. She'd spent 5 years working with former child soldiers, gang members, men whose hands still shook when motorcycles backfired. She'd published groundbreaking research on race-based psychological conditioning, how trauma could wire itself into the body along the same neural pathways that processed identity, skin color, and threat. Western journals had called her work interesting, but niche. Seoul had called it essential. The fellowship offer had come with a salary that made her mother cry, a private research lab, and access to cases most psychologists would never see. High-risk clients, corporate trauma survivors, people whose breakdowns happened behind tinted glass and NDAs. It was everything she'd worked for. So why did her stomach twist every time she looked at the plane ticket? A knock rattled her door, 3 sharp raps, then 2 softer ones. She smiled despite herself. Only one person knocked like that. "It's open, Kofi." Her cousin pushed the door wide, stepping into the candlelit room with the kind of energy that filled every space he entered. Kofi was tall, broad-shouldered, with a face that looked like it smiled easily but currently wasn't. "You're really doing this," he said, not a question. "Hello to you too," Amma replied, folding another shirt. "Yes, I'm really doing this. It's called a career opportunity." "It's called walking into a trap." She stopped folding. "Excuse me?" Kofi closed the door behind him and leaned against it, arms crossed. He wasn't wearing his usual easy grin. Tonight he looked like the man he actually was when he wasn't pretending to be her overprotective older cousin. He looked like an Interpol agent. "The firm sponsoring your fellowship," he said carefully, "Hwarang Defensive Solutions. You looked into them?" "Of course I did," Amma said. "Crisis management, corporate security, trauma consulting for high net worth clients, they're legitimate. On paper." She set the shirt down. "Kofi, what are you talking about?" He pulled out his phone, swiped through a few screens, then turned it toward her. The file on the screen was heavily redacted, black bars across names, dates, locations, but she could read enough. Hwarang Defensive Solutions, watch list status, active suspected ties, organized crime networks, money laundering, private security fronts, linked entities, redacted, cold lantern, redacted. Her stomach dropped. "You're saying my fellowship is funded by criminals?" "I'm saying," Kofi replied, sliding the phone back into his pocket, "that the firm has connections we've been tracking for 2 years. We don't have enough to move on them yet, but we know they're dirty. And now they're flying you to Seoul, paying you more than any legitimate fellowship would, and putting you in close contact with clients we can't identify." Amma's mind raced. "Why didn't you tell me this before I accepted?" "I tried to get it canceled," he said quietly. "Pulled every string I had. But the fellowship went through channels I couldn't touch. Someone high up wanted you there." "Why me? That's what scares me." Kofi stepped closer, his voice dropping. "You're a Black African trauma specialist with no ties to East Asia, no previous clients in that region, and expertise in exactly the kind of psychological conditioning that powerful, dangerous men might want fixed. You're not random, Amma. You were chosen." She wanted to argue, wanted to say he was being paranoid, overprotective, seeing conspiracies where there was just opportunity. But she'd spent years studying how predators think, and predators didn't offer prey six-figure salaries unless they wanted something specific. "So what do I do?" she asked. "Turn it down? Walk away from the biggest opportunity of my career because it might be dangerous?" "Yes," Kofi said simply. "That's easy for you to say." Her voice sharpened. "You have a career that takes you seriously. You have institutions that don't question whether you belong in the room. I've spent 5 years being called promising and interesting while watching white researchers with half my publications get tenure and book deals." "I know. Do you?" She stepped toward him, candlelight flickering between them. "Do you know what it's like to be brilliant and invisible at the same time? To have your work cited without your name attached? To be told you're too niche, too regional, not universal enough, as if trauma only matters when it happens to people they care about?" Kofi's jaw tightened, but he didn't interrupt. "This fellowship," Amma continued, "means I can fund my clinic back home. It means Mama's house gets repaired. It means my research gets published in journals that actually matter. It means I stop being promising and start being undeniable." "And if it gets you killed?" Kofi asked quietly. The question hung in the air like smoke. Amma looked at the half-packed suitcase, at the plane ticket on her desk, at the candles burning low. "Then I die doing something that mattered," she said finally, "instead of staying safe and invisible." Kofi exhaled slowly, rubbing his face with both hands. "You're the most brilliant and most stubborn person I know," he muttered. "Runs in the family." He looked at her for a long moment, then pulled a small device from his pocket, a sleek black rectangle no bigger than a USB drive. "If you're going," he said, pressing it into her hand, "you take this. It's a tracker. Keep it on you at all times. I'll know where you are, and if you go dark for more than 24 hours, I'm coming for you." Amma closed her fingers around it. "Kofi." "And you send me everything," he continued, his voice hard. "Every name, every location, every client you meet. You treat every smile like a mask and every offer like a trap. You stay paranoid, Amma. Paranoid keeps you alive." She nodded, throat tight. He pulled her into a hug, fierce and quick. "I'm tagging your travel in our system," he murmured against her hair. "If anything happens, we'll know." When he pulled back, his eyes were darker than she'd ever seen them. "There's a code name in our files," he said. "Cold Lantern. We don't know who it is yet, but we know they're connected to Hwarang, and we know they're dangerous." "Cold Lantern," Amma repeated. Kofi nodded. "If you hear that name, you run. You don't ask questions. You don't try to help. You run, and you call me. Understood?" "Understood." He left the way he came, quick, quiet, leaving the door slightly open behind him. Amma stood alone in the candlelight, the tracker warm in her palm. Outside, Akra hummed and shouted and lived. Inside, she made a choice. She finished packing. 2 weeks later, Seoul swallowed her whole. Amma had thought she was prepared. She'd studied Korean greetings, downloaded translation apps, watched videos on subway etiquette. None of it mattered. Seoul moved like a machine, fast, efficient, and utterly indifferent to whether you could keep up. She navigated subway stations where signs blurred into beautiful, incomprehensible shapes. She mispronounced street names badly enough that taxi drivers smiled politely and drove her somewhere close enough. She got stared at in convenience stores. Not hostile, just curious. The kind of look that said, "You're not from here," louder than words ever could. It was lonely in a way Akra had never been. But it was also exactly what she'd come for. Hwarang Defensive Solutions occupied 3 floors of a glass and steel tower in Gangnam, the kind of building that looked like it had been designed by someone who thought emotions were inefficient. The lobby was all white marble and sharp angles. The receptionist spoke perfect English and smiled with her mouth, but not her eyes. Amma's first week was a blur of orientations, paperwork, and polite meetings where everyone called her Dr. Ndlovu, but pronounced it 4 different ways. Her second week, they gave her actual clients. A chaebol air detoxing off pills, hands shaking as he described panic attacks that hit him in boardrooms. A group of private security contractors, ex-military, bullet scars on their forearms, eyes that tracked every exit. A corporate executive who'd survived a kidnapping attempt and now couldn't sleep without checking the locks 17 times. Amma worked. She asked the questions no one else dared to ask. She refused to sugarcoat diagnoses. She set boundaries that made people uncomfortable and held them anyway. And slowly she started to notice things. The way conversations stopped when she walked into certain rooms. The way some clients had scars that didn't match their official stories. The way Director Han, her supervisor, smooth-voiced and always smiling, talked around the word criminal, but never quite denied it. Hwarang wasn't just a consulting firm. It was a very expensive, very discreet repair shop for people who broke in ways the law couldn't see. She should have been horrified. Instead, she was fascinated. Because trauma didn't care about morality. A nervous system didn't ask if you deserved help before it shut down. And some of the most broken people she'd ever met were the ones everyone else had written off as monsters. Still, she kept Kofi's tracker in her bag. She sent him names, dates, observations. She stayed paranoid. 3 weeks in, Director Han visited her office. It was late. Past 8, the building mostly empty. Amma was reviewing case notes when he knocked, then entered without waiting for an answer. "Dr. Ndlovu," he said warmly, setting down 2 cups of coffee, "you've been making quite an impression." "Thank you," she replied, not touching the coffee. He smiled at that, like he'd expected it. "I have a special opportunity for you," he continued, settling into the chair across from her. "A private client. Very high profile, very delicate condition." Amma's instincts prickled. How delicate? "Psychogenic in nature," Han said carefully. "Autonomic nervous system dysfunction triggered by specific stimuli. The client has seen specialists across 3 continents. No one has been able to help." "And you think I can?" "I think," Han said, "that you have a very specific skill set. Trauma psychology, race-based conditioning, neurological triggers tied to identity and perception." Her blood went cold. "You're saying this client's dysfunction is tied to race?" "To a traumatic event involving a black woman," Han clarified. "The client now experiences severe physiological shutdown in the presence of black women, particularly in contexts that involve intimacy or vulnerability." Amma leaned back in her chair, mind racing. This was exactly the kind of case Kofi had warned her about. Specific, targeted, dangerous. "Why me?" she asked. "Because you're outside his world," Han replied. "No previous ties to Seoul's medical community, no connections to his social or professional circles. And because your research suggests you understand how trauma can rewire the body's threat response along racialized lines." "What's the compensation?" Han slid a folder across the desk. She opened it. The number on the contract made her breath catch. $200,000 for a single consultation. That's... She couldn't finish the sentence. "Life-changing," Han supplied. "I know. The client is desperate, Dr. Ndlovu, and desperation makes people generous." Amma stared at the number. That was her mother's house, fully repaired. Her clinic funded for 2 years. Research grants that would make her impossible to ignore. That was everything she'd come to Seoul for, wrapped in a single consultation. "What's the catch?" she asked. "The session takes place at the client's private facility," Han said. "For security and discretion. You'll be escorted there and back. Full medical equipment provided. The client will answer any questions necessary for diagnosis. And if I'm uncomfortable, you're free to leave at any time," Han said smoothly. "Though I should mention, the client rarely asks for help. This is a significant act of vulnerability for someone in his position." "His position," Amma repeated. "What exactly does this client do?" Han's smile didn't waver. "He solves problems that other people can't, much like yourself." That wasn't an answer. That was a warning dressed as a compliment. Amma looked at the contract again, at the number that could change everything, at the blank space where the client's name should be. "I need to think about it," she said. "Of course." Han stood, leaving his untouched coffee on her desk. "But don't think too long. Opportunities like this don't wait." When he left, Amma sat in the silence of her office, staring at the contract. Her phone buzzed. "Kofi, how's Seoul?" She looked at the message, at the contract, at the window reflecting her own uncertain face. "Amma. Complicated. I'll call you tomorrow." She didn't call him tomorrow, because by tomorrow, she'd already said yes. Amma didn't sleep that night. She sat on her apartment floor, back against the wall, staring at the contract like it might suddenly reveal what it was really asking for. $200,000. The number glowed in her mind, impossible and real at the same time. She thought about her mother's house in Accra, the roof that leaked every rainy season, the walls that needed replastering, the electrical wiring that sparked when you used too many appliances at once. She thought about the clinic she'd dreamed of opening, not someday, not eventually. Actually opening it with real funding, real equipment, real ability to help people who'd never see a therapist otherwise. She thought about every journal that had called her work interesting but not priority, every grant application rejected with polite encouragement to try again next year. This contract could end all of that, or it could end her. At 3 a.m., her phone buzzed. "Kofi, you're awake." "I can tell. What happened?" She stared at the message for a full minute before typing back. "Amma, they offered me a private consultation, 1 session. The money is significant." 3 dots appeared immediately, disappeared, appeared again. "Kofi, how significant?" "Amma, life-changing." "Kofi, that's not an amount, that's a red flag with a price tag." She almost smiled despite herself. "Amma, $200,000. Her phone rang instantly. "Are you out of your mind?" Kofi's voice was low, controlled, which meant he was actually furious. "Amma, that's not a consultation fee. That's hush money. That's disappear and no one asks questions money." "Or it's desperation," she countered. "Someone who's tried everything and failed. Someone who needs help badly enough to pay anything for it." "Someone who's dangerous," Kofi shot back. "Rich men with delicate conditions who need foreign. Doctors and absolute discretion. That's not a patient, Amma. That's a predator shopping for prey." She closed her eyes, pressing the phone harder against her ear. "What if he's both?" she asked quietly. "What if he's dangerous and suffering? Do I just walk away because helping him is risky?" "Yes," Kofi said immediately. "That's exactly what you do. You walk away, you finish your fellowship with the safe cases, and you come home alive. And stay invisible," Amma said. "Stay promising. Stay almost enough, but not quite." Silence stretched between them, heavy with everything they weren't saying. "You've already decided," Kofi said finally, and his voice had gone flat, resigned. "I haven't," Amma lied. "I'm still thinking." "No, you're not. You're justifying." He exhaled slowly. "Tell me the details, everything they told you." So she did. The psychogenic shutdown, the racialized trigger, the client who'd seen specialists on 3 continents and found nothing but failure. When she finished, Kofi was quiet for a long time. "That's not just trauma," he said at last. "That's weaponized trauma. The kind that comes from violence, from something that broke him in a very specific way. And if he's connected to Hwarang, if he's the kind of man who can pay $200,000 for a single session..." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. "I know," Amma whispered. "If you do this," Kofi said, "you take every precaution. You keep your phone on you. You share your location with me in real time. You set up a check-in schedule, and if you miss even one, I'm coming for you. Understood?" "Understood." "And Amma?" His voice softened. "If you hear the name Cold Lantern, I run," she finished. "You already told me." I'm telling you again, because I have a bad feeling about this." After they hung up, Amma sat in the dark for another hour. Then she opened her laptop and typed a single email to Director Han. "I accept, but I have conditions." The next morning, Han called her into his office. He was smiling, but it was the kind of smile that didn't reach past his teeth. "Your conditions," he said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. "Let's hear them." Amma sat spine straight, hands folded in her lap. "I keep my phone," she said. "I share my live location with a trusted contact. I have the right to end the session at any point if I feel unsafe, and transportation will be provided immediately. No arguments, no delays." Han nodded slowly. "Reasonable. What else?" "I want the client's full medical history," she continued. "Not summaries, not redacted files, everything. If I'm going to treat trauma-based dysfunction, I need to know what caused it." "The client may not be comfortable sharing certain details." "Then the client doesn't get treatment," Amma said flatly. "I'm not working blind." Han studied her for a moment, then smiled. This time, it almost looked genuine. "You're tougher than you look, Dr. Ndlovu." "I'm exactly as tough as I look," she replied. "You just weren't paying attention." He laughed at that, a short bark of sound. "The client will agree to your terms," he said. "He's motivated. The session is scheduled for tomorrow evening. A car will pick you up at 7. "What's his name?" Amma asked. Han's smile faded slightly. "You'll meet him soon enough." That night, Amma packed a small bag with clinical supplies, her tablet loaded with research files, and Kofi's tracker buried in the inner pocket of her jacket. She messaged him the pickup time, the company name, everything Han had told her. "Kofi, I'm logging this in our system. If anything happens, we'll know." Amma, "Nothing's going to happen. It's one session." Kofi, famous last words. She tried to sleep but couldn't. Instead, she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the kind of man who would pay $200,000 to fix something most people would just learn to live with, the kind of man who couldn't live with it, the kind of man who was either desperate enough to be honest or dangerous enough to be convincing. By the time the sun rose, she still didn't know which one she was about to meet, but she knew she was going to find out. The car that picked Amma up at 7 was not a taxi. It was a black sedan with tinted windows, leather seats that smelled expensive, and a driver who didn't speak except to confirm her name. She slid into the back seat, heart hammering, and immediately opened her phone. Location sharing, active, message to Kofi, picked up, on the way. His response came instantly, "I see you, stay safe." The drive took them out of the city center, away from the neon and noise, up into the hills where the buildings thinned and the darkness thickened. Amma watched the city lights fade in the rearview mirror and felt the weight of isolation settle over her like a blanket. No crowds here, no witnesses, just money, walls, and silence. The compound appeared suddenly. High stone walls, cameras embedded so subtly you'd miss them if you weren't looking. A gate that opened without the driver saying a word. Inside, the aesthetic shifted. Minimalist stone pathways, carefully placed lighting that made everything look like art. A central building that was all clean lines and dark wood, the kind of architecture that whispered, "I am civilized," while the walls screamed, "I am untouchable." Amma's clinical mind cataloged it all, designed to intimidate and comfort simultaneously, to make you feel like a guest while reminding you that you were very much not in control. The car stopped in front of the main entrance. A man in a dark suit opened her door before she could reach for the handle. "Dr. Ndlovu," he said, his English flawless, his tone perfectly polite. "I'm Cha Min, head of security. Welcome." She stepped out, gripping her bag tighter than necessary. "Thank you." Cha Min gestured toward the entrance. "Mr. Kang is waiting, but first, a brief security protocol." He led her through a scanner, airport level, thorough. Her bag was checked, her phone examined, but returned. Her jacket inspected. They found the tracker. Cha Min held it up, one eyebrow raised. "A precaution," Amma said evenly. "I'm sure you understand." He studied her for a moment, then handed it back. "Keep it," he said. "But know that it won't transmit from inside the compound. Our security protocols block external signals." Her stomach dropped, but she kept her face neutral. "Of course." Kofi's last known location for her would be the gate. If she didn't leave by morning, he'd know something was wrong. If she didn't leave at all... She pushed the thought away. Cha Min led her deeper into the compound, through hallways that smelled faintly of sandalwood and something sharper. Antiseptic, maybe. Medical. "Mr. Kang values discretion," Cha Min said as they walked. "What you see here, what you learn here, stays here. Understood?" "Doctor-patient confidentiality," Amma replied. "I'm bound by it professionally." "Good." He stopped in front of a heavy wooden door. "One more thing. If at any point you feel endangered, say the word sunrise. The room is monitored. Security will respond immediately." Amma's pulse spiked. A safe word. That was either deeply considerate or deeply terrifying. "Understood," she said. Cha Min opened the door. The room beyond was not what she expected. It was beautiful. Soft, warm lighting, dark wood floors, a wall of glass overlooking the city, Seoul glittering below like a distant, unreachable thing. Medical equipment tucked discreetly into sleek cabinets, barely visible unless you knew what to look for. And in the center of it all, standing with his back to her, was a man who radiated control the way some people radiated heat. Kang Seojin. He turned slowly, and Amma's breath caught despite herself. He was beautiful in the way sharp things were beautiful. All clean lines and dangerous edges. Black shirt, sleeves rolled to his forearms, exposing ink and scars. His face was unreadable, carved from stone and discipline. But his eyes were the eyes of a man barely holding himself together. "Dr. Ndlovu," he said, his voice low and controlled. "Thank you for coming." Amma set her bag down carefully, buying herself a second to steady her nerves. "Mr. Kang." "Seojin," he corrected. "If you're going to be inside my head, we should skip the formalities." She nodded. "Then call me Amma." He gestured to a chair. "Sit, please." She didn't sit. "I prefer to stand for initial consultations," she said. "It helps me observe." A flicker of something crossed his face. Surprise, maybe, or respect. "Observe away," he said. So she did. She watched the way he held himself, perfectly still but coiled tight. The way his hands stayed loose at his sides, but his fingers twitched once, twice, before going utterly motionless. The way his gaze tracked her every movement, not predatory but hyper-aware, like a man who'd learned that survival meant noticing everything. "Director Han briefed me on your condition," Amma said. "Psychogenic erectile dysfunction, triggered specifically in the presence of black women, onset 2 years ago following a traumatic event." "Correct. And you've seen specialists on 3 continents." "Correct." "What did they try?" "Everything." His jaw tightened. Medication, therapy, hypnosis, exposure exercises that made it worse. One doctor suggested I was lying for attention. Another said I was secretly gay and in denial. Amma's clinical detachment cracked slightly. "That's reductive." "That's expensive and useless," Seojin said flatly. "I don't need theories. I need solutions." "Solutions require understanding the problem," Amma countered. "And understanding requires honesty. So I'm going to ask you once, and I need a real answer. What happened 2 years ago?" His entire body went rigid. For a moment, she thought he'd refuse. Thought he'd shut down, throw her out, prove Kofi right about dangerous men and bad decisions. Then he spoke. "Lagos," he said quietly. "A deal went bad. Guns. Hostages. A woman, a black woman, was used as leverage against me. I killed the man holding her, but not fast enough. She had blood on her face, terror in her eyes, and when it was over, she looked at me like I was every man who'd ever hurt her. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. She said, "You're all the same. You think you own us." Then she walked out, and something in me broke. Amma's chest tightened. That wasn't just trauma. That was moral injury. Guilt and horror wired directly into his autonomic nervous system, triggered every time his brain registered a black woman as present. After that, Seojin continued, every time I was near a black woman, my body shut down. Hands cold, vision narrowed, heart racing. And if there was any sexual context at all. He didn't finish. He didn't have to. Amma took a slow breath, her clinical mind already mapping neural pathways, trauma responses, the way the brain could turn identity into threat. "I need to run some tests," she said. "Check your autonomic responses, nerve conduction. See if there's a physiological component we're missing." "Fine. It'll require physical contact." His jaw clenched. "I know." She moved closer, slowly, watching his body language. At 3 feet, his breathing changed, shallower, faster. At 2 feet, his hands curled into fists. At 1 foot, she could see the pulse hammering in his throat. "On a scale of 1 to 10, she asked quietly, "how strong is the urge to retreat right now?" 8, he said through gritted teeth. "But you're not retreating." "No." "Why not?" His eyes locked onto hers, dark and desperate. "Because I'm tired of being afraid." Something in Amma's chest cracked open. She'd worked with soldiers, with survivors, with people whose bodies had betrayed them in every possible way. But she'd never seen someone fight their own nervous system with this much raw, stubborn will. "I'm going to touch your shoulder," she said. "Just your shoulder, if you need me to." "Stop, say so." He nodded once, sharp. She reached out slowly and placed her hand on his shoulder. His entire body went rigid. She waited, counting his breaths, watching his pupils dilate and contract. Then, slowly, impossibly, something shifted. His breathing steadied, his shoulders dropped half an inch, and his body responded. Not with fear, not with shutdown, with heat. Seojin's eyes went wide, shock and disbelief flooding his face. Amma felt it too, the way his muscles relaxed under her palm, the way his breath caught for an entirely different reason. She pulled her hand back, professional instinct screaming at her to maintain boundaries. But it was too late. He'd felt it. She'd felt it. For the first time in 2 years, in the presence of a black woman, Kang Seojin's body had responded with desire instead of fear. The silence in the room was deafening. "What?" His voice was hoarse. "What did you just do?" "I don't know," Amma said honestly, her own heart racing. "That shouldn't have—" "Do it again." "Mr. Kang Seojin." He stepped closer, desperation bleeding through his control. "Do it again. I need to know if it was real." "That's not how this works." "I don't care how it works." His hand shot out, gripping her wrist. Not hard, but firm. Desperate. "For 2 years, I've been broken. For 2 years, I've avoided, medicated, hidden, and you just, in 30 seconds... He stopped, jaw working, eyes blazing. "You're not leaving," he said, his voice cold and desperate and absolutely certain. "Not until I understand what you just did to me, not until you fix this, whatever it takes." Amma looked at his hand on her wrist, at the door behind her now feeling impossibly far away, at the man in front of her, powerful and broken and terrifying in his need. "Let go of me," she said quietly. He did immediately, hands dropping to his sides, but his eyes never left hers. "Please," he said, and the words sounded like it cost him everything. "Don't leave, not yet." Amma's mind raced. Every instinct screamed run. But another part of her, the part that had spent years studying how trauma rewired the brain, how bodies could be unlocked with the right combination of pressure and presence, that part whispered, "What if you just found the key?" "I need to think," she said. "Think here." "That's not—" "I'll give you space." Seojin said quickly. A suite, privacy, full access to research materials. Just don't leave the compound, not tonight. It wasn't a request. It was a plea wrapped in a command, wrapped in desperation. Amma looked at him, really looked, at the man who'd built an empire on control and was now begging a stranger not to walk away. One night, she heard herself say. I'll stay one night, but tomorrow we talk terms, real terms, and if I don't like them, I walk. Understood? Relief flooded his face so completely it was almost painful to watch. Understood. Chamin appeared at the door as if summoned, leading her to a suite. That was beautiful and comfortable and very clearly monitored. As the door closed behind her, Amma pulled out her phone. No signal. She was alone. In a compound with a mafia boss whose body had just confessed something his mouth never would. And she had no idea if she'd just made the biggest breakthrough of her career or the biggest mistake of her life. Amma didn't sleep. The suite was perfect. Too perfect. King-sized bed with sheets that probably cost more than her monthly rent, a bathroom with a soaking tub and toiletries that smelled like luxury, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Seoul's glittering skyline, but the windows didn't open. She'd checked. She'd also checked the door, unlocked, but she'd heard the subtle shift of footsteps outside, guards probably, polite, professional, absolutely preventing her from leaving. At 3 a.m., she gave up pretending to rest and sat at the desk, pulling out her tablet. Her hands were still shaking. Not from fear, though there was plenty of that. From the clinical impossibility of what had just happened. Psychogenic erectile dysfunction didn't just reverse from a single touch. The neural pathways that wired trauma into the body took months, sometimes years, to rewire. Exposure therapy was gradual, controlled, built on repeated safe experiences that slowly taught the nervous system it could relax. What happened in that room shouldn't have been possible. Unless... Amma opened her research files, scrolling through case studies on trauma-based sexual dysfunction. There were documented cases of spontaneous remission, moments where the right stimulus, the right context, the right person created a crack in the psychological armor. But those were rare, unpredictable, and they almost never happened on first contact. So why had Seojin's body responded to her? She thought about the way he described the Lagos woman. Terrified, blood-smeared, condemning. His brain had wired black woman with judgment, danger, failure. But Amma hadn't been any of those things. She'd been clinical, calm, professional. She'd touched him not as a woman, but as a doctor. Neutral, non-sexual, focused entirely on neural pathways instead of desire. Maybe that was the difference. Maybe his body had finally encountered a black woman who wasn't asking anything of him, wasn't judging him, wasn't a reminder of Lagos, just a doctor doing her job. And maybe, just maybe, that had been enough to crack the association. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. She tensed. Yes? Dr. Ndlovu, Chamin's voice polite as ever. Mr. Kang requests your presence. Breakfast. It wasn't a question. Amma glanced at the clock. 6 a.m. Apparently, Mafia bosses didn't sleep either. The dining room was smaller than she'd expected, intimate in a way that felt deliberate. A table set for two, soft morning light filtering through sheer curtains. The smell of coffee, rice, grilled fish, traditional Korean breakfast laid out with the kind of care that suggested this wasn't normal. Seojin stood when she entered, and the formality of it caught her off guard. You didn't sleep, he said. Not a question. Neither did you, she replied. A faint smile ghosted across his face. No. He gestured to the chair across from him. Please, eat. We should talk. Amma sat, eyeing the food warily. Is it poisoned? His eyebrows rose. If I wanted you dead, Dr. Ndlovu, I wouldn't waste good food doing it. Fair point. She picked up her chopsticks, taking a small bite of rice. It was perfect. Of course it was. Seojin watched her for a moment, then spoke. I owe you an apology, he said quietly. Last night, I grabbed your wrist. I made demands. I didn't give you a real choice about staying. That was unacceptable. Amma set down her chopsticks. But you're not letting me leave. No, he admitted. I'm not. At least he was honest. So what is this? She asked, gesturing at the breakfast, the polite distance, the careful civility. An apology or a negotiation? Both. He leaned forward slightly. I need your help, Amma. Desperately. But I don't want to take it by force. I want you to choose to stay. That's not a choice if the alternative is captivity. I know. His jaw tightened. Which is why I'm offering you terms. Real ones. She crossed her arms. I'm listening. Stay for 2 weeks, Seojin said. Work with me. Figure out why your touch worked when nothing else did. Help me understand if it's replicable, if it's sustainable, if it's real. And in exchange? $500,000, he said, wired to any account you want, plus full access to my medical history. No redactions, no lies, plus a research grant in your name for whatever project you choose, plus guaranteed safe passage out of here when the 2 weeks are done. Amma's breath caught. $500,000. That wasn't just life-changing. That was generational wealth. That was her clinic fully funded, her mother's house rebuilt, her research legitimized on a global scale. That was everything she'd ever wanted, handed to her by a man who terrified her. And if I say no? She asked. Seojin's expression didn't change. Then you stay anyway, but without the money, without the access, and without my cooperation. I'll keep you comfortable, but you'll be a prisoner instead of a partner. That's coercion. Yes, he said simply. It is. I'm not a good man, Amma. I've done things that would horrify you. I've hurt people, ruined lives, built an empire on fear and violence. But I'm also desperate, and desperation makes monsters of all of us. She stared at him, searching his face for deception, for manipulation. All she found was exhaustion and raw, terrible honesty. Why me? She asked. Why not just learn to live with it? You've managed for 2 years. Because managing isn't living, Seojin said, his voice dropping. It's surviving. And I'm tired of surviving my own body. I'm tired of flinching. I'm tired of the rule I built to hide my shame. I'm tired of being the man that woman in Lagos saw when she looked at me. His hands curled into fists on the table. You touched me, and for the first time in 2 years, I felt like maybe I could be something other than broken. I'm not letting that go. I can't. Amma's chest tightened. She'd worked with trauma survivors long enough to recognize the truth when she heard it. This wasn't a game. This wasn't manipulation. This was a man drowning, and she was the first person who'd thrown him anything that looked like a rope. I have conditions, she said finally. Relief flickered across his face. Name them. Full transparency. You tell me everything. The Lagos incident, your history, every detail that might be relevant. No lies, no deflection. Agreed. I control the treatment plan. You don't dictate methods, timelines, or outcomes. If I say we need to slow down, we slow down. Agreed. And if at any point I determine that this is unethical, that I'm being used to harm others or enable your criminal activities, I walk. Immediately. No negotiation. Seojin hesitated at that one. Define enable, he said carefully. If you use my methods to become a more efficient criminal, if you weaponize this treatment, if you sell it to other dangerous men, that's enabling, and I won't be part of it. He studied her for a long moment. I can't promise I'll become a saint, he said, but I can promise I won't weaponize what you teach me. This is about fixing myself, not building a better monster. It wasn't enough, but it was something. 2 weeks, Amma said. After that, I leave, no matter what, even if the treatment isn't finished. 2 weeks, Seojin agreed, and you leave with everything I promised. He extended his hand across the table. Amma looked at it. Scarred knuckles, steady fingers, the hand of a man who'd built an empire on violence. She thought about Kofi's warning, about Cold Lantern, about every instinct screaming that this was a trap. Then she thought about the clinic she could build, the lives she could change, the research that could help thousands of people suffering from trauma they didn't choose. She reached out and shook his hand. His grip was firm, warm, and for just a second, she felt his pulse jump under her fingers. "Partners," he said quietly. "Patient and doctor," she corrected, "for now." She pulled her hand back, ignoring the way her own pulse had quickened. "When do we start?" she asked. "Now," Seojin said, "if you're ready." Amma stood, squaring her shoulders. "Let's go fix your broken nervous system." As she followed him back to the medical suite, she heard the soft click of the door locking behind them. She'd just agreed to stay in a compound with a Mafia boss whose body responded to her touch in ways neither of them understood. She'd just traded her freedom for money and the slim hope that she could heal someone who might be beyond healing. Kofi was going to kill her. If Seojin didn't first, the first 3 days were clinical. Amma ran every test she could think of: autonomic response assessments, nerve conduction studies, psychological evaluations disguised as casual conversation. She mapped Seojin's triggers with the precision of a cartographer charting dangerous territory. Proximity to black women, 8 out of 10 anxiety response. Proximity to Amma specifically, 4 out of 10, dropping to 2 when she was in doctor mode. Visual stimuli, photos, videos, 6 out of 10. Auditory stimuli, voices, accents, 5 out of 10. Touch, variable depending on context and intention. The data was fascinating. His body had learned to differentiate her from the Lagos woman, but the association was fragile, easily disrupted by anything that shifted the context from clinical to personal. When she touched his shoulder while taking notes, fine. When she touched his shoulder while making eye contact and smiling, his breathing spiked, his hands went cold. His nervous system was walking a tightrope between doctor and woman, and any hint that she might be the latter sent him spiraling. "You're compartmentalizing me," Amma explained on the 3rd evening, reviewing her notes in the medical suite. "Your brain has created a category, Amma the doctor. That category feels safe. But the moment I do anything that reminds you I'm also a black woman, not just a professional, the Lagos Association tries to take over." Seojin sat across from her, shirt sleeves rolled up, looking more exhausted than she'd ever seen him. "So what do we do?" he asked. "We expand the category," Amma said, slowly, carefully. "We teach your nervous system that black women can exist in multiple contexts without danger, that I can be a doctor and a woman and someone you share meals with, and none of that means Lagos is happening again." "Exposure therapy. Controlled exposure," she corrected. "We're not flooding you with triggers. We're introducing them gradually in contexts where you feel safe." "I don't feel safe," Seojin said quietly. Amma looked up from her notes. His face was carefully neutral, but his hands were clenched on the armrests. "Ever?" she asked. "Not in years." Something in her chest ached. "Then we start there," she said, "teaching your body what safety feels like again." They fell into a rhythm. Mornings, structured sessions in the medical suite, breathing exercises, guided visualization, progressive muscle relaxation while Amma sat at varying distances. Afternoons, less formal. They'd have lunch together, sometimes in silence, sometimes with Amma asking careful questions about his childhood, his entry into organized crime, the moments that had shaped him. He answered more honestly than she'd expected. "I was 12, he said one afternoon, picking at his food, "when I realized my father's fists weren't normal, that other kids didn't go to school with bruises they had to explain away." "What did you do?" "I got good at lying." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Turns out that's a useful skill in my line of work." "And your mother?" His jaw tightened. "She left when I was 8. I don't blame her. He would have killed her eventually. Amma set down her chopsticks. Did he kill anyone? No, Seojin said, but only because I did it first. The room went very quiet. You killed your father, Amma said. Not a question. I was 16. His voice was flat, emotionless. He came at me with a bottle. I had a knife. It was him or me. What happened after? I ran, ended up on the streets, got picked up by a mid-level gang that needed kids who were smart and didn't ask questions. Turned out I was very good at both. He looked at her then, eyes dark and unreadable. Does that horrify you? He asked. No, Amma said honestly. It makes me sad. He blinked, clearly not expecting that answer. Sad? You were a child, she said. A child in survival mode. You did what you had to do. That's not evil. That's trauma. I've done worse since then, Seojin said. Much worse. Things I chose, not things I had to do. I know. And you're still here. I'm still here, Amma agreed. Because I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to help you heal. He stared at her for a long moment, something shifting in his expression, something raw and unguarded. Why? He asked quietly. Why do you care if a man like me heals? Amma considered the question. Because everyone deserves the chance to be more than their worst moment, she said finally. Even you. The nights were harder. Amma would retreat to her suite, exhausted from the emotional weight of the day, and try to process everything she was learning. Seojin wasn't a monster. He was a man shaped by violence, who'd learned to survive by becoming the thing he'd once feared. But underneath the control, the coldness, the carefully constructed armor, there was someone who still flinched at raised voices, who couldn't sleep without checking the locks, who carried his father's violence in his bones. On the 5th night, she woke to a sound, muffled, distant. A shout cut off abruptly. She sat up, heart pounding, and crept to her door. The hallway was empty, but she could hear voices, low, urgent, coming from somewhere deeper in the compound. She shouldn't investigate. She should stay in her room, mind her business. Remember that this place was built on secrets she didn't want to know. But she was already moving, following the sound. It led her to a half-open door at the end of the hall. Inside, she could see Seojin sitting on the edge of a bed, head in his hands, breathing hard. Cha-min stood nearby, speaking in rapid Korean, his tone concerned. A nightmare. Seojin had woken from a nightmare. Amma should have turned around, should have given him privacy. Instead, she knocked softly. Both men looked up, startled. I heard... Amma started, then stopped. Are you okay? Seojin's face was a mask, but his hands were shaking. I'm fine, he said, voice tight. You're not, Amma said, stepping inside before she could second-guess herself. Cha-min, can you give us a moment? Cha-min looked at Seojin, who nodded once. When the door closed, Amma moved closer, slowly, watching Seojin's body language. Lagos? She asked quietly. He nodded, jaw clenched. Do you want to talk about it? No. Do you want me to leave? He hesitated. No. So she sat. Not on the bed, that felt too intimate, but on the floor beside it, close enough that he could feel her presence without being crowded. Grounding exercise, she said softly. 5 things you can see. His breathing was still ragged, but he answered. The door, the window, your shoes, the lamp, my hands. 4 things you can touch. He reached out slowly, fingers brushing the bed sheet, the wall, his own knee. Then, hesitantly, he reached down. His fingers grazed her shoulder. She didn't move. 3 things you can hear, she continued. Your voice, he said, his breathing starting to slow. The air conditioning, my heartbeat. 2 things you can smell. Sandalwood, your shampoo. 1 thing you can taste. Copper, he said, blood, from biting my cheek. Amma looked up at him. His eyes were clearer now, present instead of trapped in memory. You're here, she said quietly. Not Lagos, not 16 years old with your father. Here, now. Safe. I'm never safe, Seojin said. Right now, you are, Amma countered. Right now, the only danger in this room is the one in your head, and that one we can fight. He looked at her for a long moment, something breaking in his expression. I don't know how to do this, he admitted, voice barely above a whisper. I don't know how to let someone help me. You're already doing it, Amma said. You let me sit here. You did the grounding exercise. You told me the truth instead of pretending you're fine. That's how. His hand was still on her shoulder. She should move, should reestablish professional boundaries. Instead, she reached up and covered his hand with hers, just for a moment, just long enough to let him know he wasn't alone. When she pulled away and stood, his eyes followed her. Get some sleep, she said. We have work to do tomorrow. Amma, he said as she reached the door. She turned. Thank you, he said quietly. She nodded once, then left. As she walked back to her suite, her hand still tingled where she'd touched his, and she realized with a sinking feeling in her stomach that the line between doctor and woman, between professional and personal, was starting to blur. Not just for him, for her too. Day 7 changed everything. Amma woke to the sound of helicopters. Not distant, close, the rhythmic thump of rotors vibrating through the compound's walls. She rushed to the window and saw 3 black helicopters circling before landing somewhere beyond her view. Something was wrong. She dressed quickly and opened her door to find Cha Min already there, his usual calm replaced by something harder. Stay in your suite, he said. What's happening? Security. Situation. Nothing that concerns you. If it's happening in this compound, it concerns me, Amma shot back. Where's Seojin? Cha Min's jaw tightened. Handling it. I want to see him. Dr. Ndlovu. Now Cha Min. Something in her tone must have surprised him, because after a moment he nodded. Stay close to me. Don't speak unless spoken to. He led her through corridors she hadn't seen before, deeper into the compound. The aesthetic changed. Less luxury, more function, concrete, steel, cameras everywhere. They stopped outside a room with reinforced doors. Inside, she could hear voices, sharp, angry, speaking rapid Korean. Cha Min opened the door. The room was a command center, screens covering one wall, showing security feeds from multiple locations, a table in the center covered with tablets, phones, documents, and Seojin, standing at the head of it all, radiating cold fury. He was different here. Not the exhausted patient from their sessions, not the broken man from his nightmares. This was the Mafia boss Seoul feared. 3 shipments intercepted in 1 week, someone was saying in English, clearly for the benefit of others in the room. That's not coincidence. That's coordination. Interpol? Another voice asked. Or a rival syndicate, a woman replied, her tone clipped. Either way, someone's inside our network. Seojin's eyes flicked to the doorway, landing on Amma. His expression didn't change, but something in his posture shifted. Tension layering over tension. Cha Min, he said quietly. Why is Dr. Ndlovu here? She insisted, Cha Min replied. This doesn't concern her. If it affects my safety, it concerns me, Amma said, stepping forward before she could second-guess herself. The room went silent. Every eye turned to her, calculating, assessing, some openly hostile. Seojin's jaw tightened. Everyone out. 5 minutes. The room emptied quickly, people filing past Amma with expressions ranging from curiosity to contempt. When the door closed, Seojin turned to her. You shouldn't be here, he said, voice low and controlled. What's happening? Amma asked. Those helicopters are bringing in people I need to deal with, Seojin cut in. It's business, dangerous business, the kind you don't need to know about. I'm already in the middle of it, Amma countered. I'm in your compound, treating you, surrounded by your people. Don't pretend I'm separate from this. You are separate, Seojin said, stepping closer. You're a doctor. You're here to help me, not get dragged into... Into what? Amma pressed. Your war? Your empire? Seojin, I'm not stupid. I know what you are. I knew it when I agreed to stay. But if something's happening that puts me at risk, I deserve to know. He stared at her for a long moment, conflict warring across his face. Someone's targeting my operations, he said finally, intercepting shipments, feeding information to authorities, destabilizing my network. I don't know who yet, but when I find out... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. And you think there's a leak, Amma said. Someone inside. Yes. Could it be Interpol? His eyes sharpened. Why would you ask that? Because Kofi works for Interpol, and he warned me about you, because somewhere in their files, you're called Cold Lantern, because I might be standing in the middle of an investigation I don't understand. Just a guess, Amma said carefully. You said shipments were intercepted. That sounds like law enforcement. Seojin studied her, and for a terrifying moment she thought he could see right through her. Maybe, he said finally. Or maybe it's someone who wants to take what I've built. Either way, until I know, no one is safe, including you. Then let me leave, Amma said. Our 2 weeks aren't up, but if it's dangerous, no. The word was absolute. Seojin, if there's a leak, if someone's watching my compound, you leaving now would draw attention, he said. You're safer here, where I can protect you. Or I'm a hostage you can use if things go wrong. His face went very still. Is that what you think? He asked quietly. That I'd use you as leverage. I think you'd do whatever it takes to survive, Amma said. You've told me as much. He moved closer, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. I would do whatever it takes to survive, he agreed. But not that. Not you. Why not? Because you're the first person in years who's looked at me like I'm more than the monster I've become, Seojin said, his voice dropping. And I won't destroy that, even to save myself. Amma's breath caught. Before she could respond, the door opened. Cha-min stepped in, his expression grim. Boss, they're ready for you. Seojin's mask slid back into place instantly. Keep Dr. Nlovu in her suite, he ordered. No one goes near her without my explicit permission. Understood. He turned back to Amma, and for just a second she saw the exhausted patient again beneath the cold boss. Stay safe, he said quietly. Please. Then he was gone. Amma spent the rest of the day locked in her suite, listening to the compound move around her like a living thing. Footsteps in the hallways, doors slamming, raised voices in Korean, too fast for her limited understanding. She tried to work reviewing her notes on Seojin's treatment, but her mind kept drifting. Someone was targeting him. Interpol, maybe. Kofi, possibly. And she was trapped in the middle, bound by a contract she'd signed with a man who was either protecting her or using her. At 4 p.m., her tablet chimed. She'd forgotten she'd connected it to the compound's internal network for research access. A notification popped up, a file transfer, labeled only with a string of numbers. She shouldn't open it. She opened it. It was an audio file time-stamped from earlier that morning. She pressed play. Using her data for the partners, a voice said, Director Han. The exposure protocols, the neural mapping. If it works on Seojin, we can offer it as a service. To who? Another voice, unfamiliar. War criminals, executives with PTSD, anyone wealthy enough to pay for emotional rehabilitation without the inconvenience of actual therapy. Amma's blood went cold. And the doctor? The second voice asked. She'll cooperate, Han said smoothly, or she'll stay until she does. Either way, we get what we need. The file ended. Amma sat frozen, her mind racing. They weren't just treating Seojin. They were planning to weaponize her methods. Turn her research into a commodity for the worst kind of people. Abusers who wanted to function better, not become better. She thought about the child soldiers she'd treated, the gang members trying to rebuild their lives, the survivors who'd trusted her with their trauma. And now her work was going to be sold to people who created that trauma. She had to get out. She had to tell Seojin. She had to. Her door opened. Cha Min stood there, his expression unreadable. "Mr. Kang requests your presence," he said, "in the medical suite." "Now?" "Now." Amma's heart hammered as she followed him through the compound. When they reached the medical suite, Seojin was standing by the window, his back to her. "Leave us," he told Cha Min. The door closed. Silence stretched between them. "I know about the audio file," Seojin said without turning. "I know you heard Han's plan." Amma's stomach dropped. "You're monitoring my tablet." "I monitor everything in this compound." He turned to face her. "It's how I survive." "So you knew," Amma said, anger rising in her chest. "You knew they were planning to sell my methods and you didn't tell me." "I found out this morning," Seojin said, "the same time you did. And I'm shutting it down." His voice was hard. Han overstepped. "Your work is yours, not his, not mine. Yours." Amma stared at him. "Why should I believe you?" "Because I'm giving you a choice," Seojin said. "Right now. You can leave. I'll have Chaemin drive you to the airport, wire you the full $500,000, and you never have to see me again." Her breath caught. "Just like that? Just like that?" He stepped closer. "Or you can stay. Help me finish what we started, and I promise you, on whatever honor I have left, that your methods will never be used to harm anyone. Not by me, not by anyone in my network." "How can you promise that?" "Because I'll burn the research," Seojin said simply. "Every file, every recording, every note. When you leave, it all disappears. The only person who'll know how to do what you did is you." Amma's mind reeled. "You'd destroy it, even though it's working?" "Yes." "Why?" He looked at her with those dark, exhausted eyes. "Because you were right," he said quietly. "Everyone deserves the chance to be more than their worst moment, even the people I've hurt, and I won't take that chance away from them by turning your healing into a weapon." Amma felt something crack open in her chest. This man, this dangerous, broken, impossible man was offering to destroy the one thing that could save him, just to protect the integrity of her work. "I need time to think," she whispered. "You have until morning," Seojin said. "Whatever you decide, I'll respect it." As she turned to leave, his voice stopped her. "Amma?" She looked back. "Thank you," he said, "for seeing me as more than a monster, even when I didn't deserve it." Amma didn't sleep that night either. She sat on the floor of her suite, back against the bed, staring at nothing. Two choices: leave with the money, the safety, the clean conscience of walking away before things got worse, or stay with the risk, the complexity, the terrifying possibility that she might actually be able to help someone who desperately needed it. At 2 a.m., her tablet chimed again. A message routed through an encrypted channel she didn't recognize. "Unknown. Amma, it's Kofi. If you're reading this, you're in deeper than I thought." Her heart stopped. "Unknown. I've been tracking Cold Lantern for 6 months. I know you're in his compound. I know you're treating him. And I know Interpol is planning a raid within 72 hours. No. Unknown. They want to use you as a witness. Testify about what you've seen, who you've met, what Seojin's told you. It's the only way we can build a case that'll stick." Amma's hands shook. "Unknown. I tried to keep you out of this, but now you're the key. I need you to get Seojin out of the compound. Tell him you need a field exercise, exposure therapy in a public place. We'll be waiting. We'll take him quietly. You'll be safe." Unknown. "I know this is asking a lot, but Amma, he's not the man you think he is. Cold Lantern has blood on his hands, dozens of lives, and if we don't stop him now, there will be dozens more." Unknown. "You have 48 hours. Please trust me." The message thread disappeared as soon as she finished reading. Amma sat in the dark, her mind spinning. Kofi was asking her to betray Seojin, to use the trust they'd built, the vulnerability he'd shown her, to lure him into a trap. It was the right thing to do. Seojin was a criminal. He'd admitted as much. He'd hurt people, killed people, built an empire on violence and fear. He deserved to face justice. But she thought about the way he'd looked at her when he said, "You're the first person who's looked at me like I'm more than the monster I've become." She thought about his nightmares, his father's fists, the 16-year-old boy who'd killed to survive. She thought about the way his body had finally responded without fear when she touched him. Was he a monster? Yes. Was he also a human being capable of change? She didn't know, and that uncertainty was tearing her apart. Morning came too fast. Amma found Seojin in the medical suite, standing by the window, watching the sunrise. "You didn't sleep," he said without turning. "Neither did you." "No." She moved to stand beside him, both of them staring out at Seoul waking up below. "I'm staying," she said quietly. He turned to look at her, surprise flickering across his face. "You're sure?" "No," Amma admitted. "But I'm staying anyway. We finish the 2 weeks. We finish the treatment. And then I leave. And you destroy everything." "Agreed." "But I have one more condition," she added. "Name it." "I want to do a field exercise," Amma said, her heart hammering. "Exposure therapy outside the compound. Somewhere public, neutral, a cafe maybe, or a park. Somewhere your nervous system has to adapt to my presence in a completely different context." Seojin frowned. "That's a security risk." "It's also necessary," Amma pressed. "If your body can only handle me in this controlled environment, then we haven't actually fixed anything. We've just created a new cage." He studied her for a long moment. "When?" he asked. "Tomorrow," Amma said. "Afternoon, somewhere busy enough that you'll be challenged but not so crowded that you'll be overwhelmed." She was lying to him. She was setting him up. She was doing exactly what Kofi had asked, and she hated herself for it. "All right," Seojin said finally. "Tomorrow, but Chae-min comes with us. Non-negotiable." "Fine." He smiled then, small and genuine. "You're good at this," he said, "pushing me past my limits." "That's my job. Is it?" His eyes searched hers. "Or is it something else now?" Amma's breath caught. The space between them felt charged, dangerous. "It's my job," she said firmly, stepping back. "That's all it can be." "Right," Seojin said, but something in his expression said he didn't believe her. Neither did she. The next 24 hours were agony. Amma went through the motions, sessions, meals, notes, while her mind screamed at her. She was betraying him. She was doing the right thing. She was saving lives. She was destroying the one person who'd trusted her completely. At midnight, she sent a message through the encrypted channel. "Amma, tomorrow, 2 p.m. I'll get him to Cafe Hyun in Itaewon. He'll have security with him. Unknown. We'll handle it. You've done the right thing, Amma. I'm proud of you." She deleted the message and cried for the first time since arriving in Seoul. The next afternoon, they left the compound. Seojin wore civilian clothes, jeans, a dark jacket, nothing that screamed wealth or danger. But Amma could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes tracked every person, every car. Chae-min drove, silent and watchful. When they arrived at the cafe, Seojin hesitated at the entrance. "You can do this," Amma said quietly. "I'm right here." He looked at her, and the trust in his eyes was a knife in her chest. "I know," he said. They sat at a corner table. Amma ordered coffee. Seojin ordered nothing, his hands flat on the table, breathing controlled. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Exposed," he admitted, "but not panicking. Not yet. That's progress." He smiled faintly. "You're a good teacher." Around them, the cafe hummed with life. Students studying, couples talking, a world. that had no idea a mafia boss was sitting among them, learning to be human again. Amma glanced at her watch. 2:15 p.m. Any moment now. Amma, Seojin said suddenly. She looked up. His eyes were locked on hers, dark and knowing. You're scared, he said quietly. Not of me, of something else. What is it? Her throat closed. Nothing, she lied. Just worried about the exercise. You're a terrible liar, Seojin said. It's one of the things I like about you. The cafe door opened. Men in suits walked in. Too many, too coordinated. Seojin saw them instantly. His entire body went rigid. Amma, he said, his voice deadly calm. What did you do? She couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Cha-min was already moving, hand going to his jacket, but the men were faster. Kang Seojin, one of them said in English, holding up a badge. Interpol, you're under arrest. Seojin didn't look at them. He looked at Amma, and the betrayal in his eyes shattered her. You set me up, he said quietly. Her voice broke. I had to. Seojin, you've hurt people. I trusted you, he said, and his voice was so soft, so broken it hurt more than shouting ever could. I let you see me, all of me, and you used it. I'm sorry, Amma whispered, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry. The agents moved in, pulling Seojin to his feet, cuffing his hands behind his back. He didn't resist. He just kept looking at her. I would have changed, he said. For you, I would have tried. Then they led him away. Amma sat frozen at the table, coffee going cold, the world blurring around her. Kofi appeared beside her, pulling her to her feet. You did the right thing, he said firmly. Amma, you saved lives today. But as she watched Seojin disappear into an unmarked car, his eyes haunted and empty, she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just destroyed the one person who'd believed she could see past monsters to the men underneath. And maybe, in doing so, she'd become the monster instead. What would you do if you had to choose between justice and the person you were healing? Could you betray someone who trusted you even if it was the right thing to do? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're hooked on this story and want to see what happens next, hit that subscribe button. Because besties, this is just the beginning.